بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد أما بعد. Now we reach the author rahimahullah, the matin, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding the titles and the names given to the hadiths that are reported by those types of narrators. The ta'an is either going to be لِكَذَبِ الرَّاوِي أو تُهْمَتِي بِذَلِكَ أو فُشِي غَلَطِهِ أو etc. So the first type of hadith that is reported by the narrator who has actually lied is called al-mawdu'. Al-mawdu'. As far as the second, he says وَالثَّانِي al-matruk. Al-matruk, the hadith that is لِتُهْمَةِ الرَّاوِي, because of someone accused of being a fabricator or a liar. Then Al-Hafidh rahimahullah, he says that it's called Al-Hadith al-Matruk. Al-Hadith al-Matruk. Not the narrator, but the hadith which is to be abandoned. Is to be abandoned. I.e. it's extremely weak. It is unsuitable to be used in anything. Ahkam, fada'il, zuhud, raghaib, whatever the case may be, it's unsuitable. He then says وَالثَّالِثُ الْمُنْكَرُ عَلَى رَأْيٍ. And the third is the hadith which is called al-munkar. Al-hadith al-munkar. Al-Hafidh rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that it is al-munkar. Now, like we previously explained before, the term munkar linguistically means that which is unknown. That which is unknown. It's unknown. It's something that isn't known. And the word munkar also linguistically means that which is rejected, but it's based off of that which isn't known. Qawmun munkarun, as it says in the Quran. They were unknown to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. As far as what it means technically, then we see here, the author rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, ala ra'yin, according to one interpretation. According to one interpretation. Alright? And that is the hadith that is reported by someone who's extremely weak, and this extremely weak narrator didn't go against another narrator. Fuhshi ghalatihi. It didn't go against, yani sharat al-mukhalafa, as he says in the sharh. Now, this is, he says, ala ra'yin. When we look into the actual ulama of hadith of the past, and how they use the term and the word munkar, you find it very, very different and very contrast to how the later scholars of hadith used and understood and used the term. And we don't wish to go into that right now because that's beyond this basic level of study right now. What's important is that the word munkar has a meaning linguistically, and it has a technical meaning as well. From the technical meanings is the hadith that is reported by a narrator who's very poor and very often and abundant in his errors. And there's also another meaning, is the hadith which is reported by someone who's weak and he goes against the trustworthy. And other usages as well, such as al-hadith al-fard, hadith that's just reported by one narrator, a hadith who doesn't have, or the narrator who doesn't have enough strength and power to be the only one reporting this. That's a very long discussion with regards to the word and the term al-munkar. And the student of knowledge is to gain the basic simple understanding, learn the ABCs, learn the rudiments, then move forward and progress and mature and evolve until you go and research and you read what the early scholars of hadith said and how they understood and how they applied it. And that is the correct view and the correct way, what they dealt with Imam al-Bukhari and Tirmidhi and Nasa'i, how they understood and used the term munkar, that's what al-munkar means. What Imam Ahmad and Ibn al-Madini and Muslim and Abu Dawood, how they understood it and used it, that's what it is. Alright, khayran inshallah. Let's move forward. We don't want to get stuck there. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he then says, وَكَذَا الرَّابِعُ وَالْخَامِسُ. He says, and the same applies to the fourth and the fifth. I.e., he says, مَنْ فَحُشَ غَلَطُ أَوْ كَثُرَتْ غَفْلَةُ أَوْ ظَهَرَ فِسْقُهُ. Those who have فُحْشِ الغلط, monstrous mistakes, كثرة الغفلة, abundant heedlessness, or fisq, ظهور الفسق, a sinful narrator, their hadith is called munkar. Their hadith is called munkar. The author, he says, like we just said, many different meanings and usages of the word hadith munkar. Moving forward, he then says, ثم الوهم إن اطلع عليه بالقرائن وجمع الطرق فالمعلل. Then when he spoke on أسباب الطعن في الراوي, he said وهمه, the wahm, which means that the narrator reports something mistakenly, misinterprets something mistakenly, instead of just forgetting it, instead of going against someone or whatever the case may be, he says something which is totally opposite, instead of just not having the ability to memorize it or to remember and call upon it. But he makes that which is called a wahm, which can be translated to mean misinterpretation, or can be translated to mean to compound ignorance. Instead of him saying, I can't remember, he reports and he says something which is totally incorrect and invalid. And this fact, quote unquote, isn't a fact in real life, but only exists in his head. So he says, if we figure out that the narrator made a wahm, and the only way that we can figure it out is by investigating and looking and comparing and gathering all of the versions and the turuq, the chains of narration, then it is called al-hadith al-mu'allal. It is called al-hadith al-mu'allal. Al-hadith al-mu'allal. طيب. We have the concept of al-hadith al-mu'allal that came in al-Bayquniyah and also came in a Tadhkirah. And we said that it is considered to be the noblest of all subgenres and sub-study or subfields of study of science of hadith. The most difficult, the most hard to learn, the most time-consuming, back-breaking, and the most noble is that of al-ilal, the hidden glitches and the hidden defects that are found in the ahadith, in the chains, and the actual mutun as well. So he says that when there is a misinterpretation, a mistake made by a narrator, falsely reported, and it's only discovered, he says, bil qara'in, with the context clues, this narrator, this date, this chain, this one, he's from Kufa, he's from Basra, the qara'in, okay, suluk al-jadda, whatever it may be, with jam'i turuq, and compiling and gathering all of the different asanid, then it's called al-mu'allal. In other words, if it's apparent and a clear means of weakness, then the author says it isn't considered to be al-mu'allal. Moving forward, the author rahimahullah ta'ala then says ثُمَّ الْمُخَالَفَةِ. Now speaking about the mukhalafat al-rawi, him going against others, and in reality, a waham, mukhalafa, all of these different things like this, these are all under bab al-mu'allal, all of them. Because how do we know that someone's wrong or incorrect unless we gather all of the reports, compare them, investigate, look into them, put them together? And that is exactly what we do on al-mu'allal, bil qara'in wa jam'i turuq. That's another discussion. He says, إن كانت بتغيير السياق فمدرج الإسناد أو بدمج منقوف بمرفوع فمدرج المتن أو بتقديم أو تأخير فالمقلوب أو بزيادة راو فالمزيد في متصل الأسانيد أو بإبداله ولا مرجح فالمضطرب وقد يقع الإبدال عمدا امتحانا أو بتغيير مع بقاء السياق فالمصحف والمحرف. ولا يجوز تعمد تغيير المتن بالنقص والمرادف إلى لعالم بما يحيل المعاني فإن خفي المعنى احتيج إلى شرح الغريب وبيان المشكل. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, Hafidh ibn Hajar, he then speaks on the next type of ta'an, the next type of slander or attack that will be made against the narrator, and that is al-mukhalafa, or mukhalafatihi, him going against others. So he says, if the mukhalafa of this narrator is by changing the wording, the siyaq, putting this narrator here, his name, or actual narrator himself, where he doesn't belong, then this hadith has a new term, a new name, and it's called al-mudraj. Al-mudraj, the interpolated hadith, the technical term, interpolation, or when something is put inside something else. Al-idraj bima'na al-idkhal, to put something in something, interpolate something, i.e. something that doesn't belong there is idraj, whether it's in the chain, the sanad, or whether it is idraj in the matan, putting someone who doesn't belong there in the sanad, or something that's not from the word of the Prophet ﷺ, rather it's from the interpretation of the companion, interpretation of the tabi'i. It's the statement of Aisha or Khadija, Zuhri said this, and it's not a part of the actual matan story, as we've explained before. So this is all we call al-mudraj. Mudrajul isnad, putting a narrator who doesn't belong there, or mudrajul matan, putting something in the text that doesn't belong there, intentionally or unintentionally. One may add interpretation to it, and the next narrator comes along and he doesn't get that it's an interpretation, a footnote that was put inside the actual chapter of the book, an endnote that actually got into the actual chapter, as a good example. So we have mawquf hadith, the statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, that's mawquf, as we've explained and we've taken. And then we have the marfu', the statement of Muhammad ibn Abdullah alayhi salam. So someone comes along and mistakenly narrates them and smudges or smushes them together, and he puts in one way without any distinction, then this is a mistake, and this is called al-mudraj, al-hadith al-mudraj. Something was put inside of something else incorrectly, unscientifically. As you can clearly see, how do we know that this is the statement of Ibn Mas'ud that's been added to the Prophet ﷺ's words? Unless we gather the turuq, unless we look at the other reports in which this other reporter from Ibn Mas'ud doesn't have that narration, and that's mu'allal. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. So why is there so much separation, and why isn't it distinguished, or why is such a differentiation made between these different terms when in actuality they're all one? Now one may say, what's the problem? La mushahata bil istilah. It's all terminology. You can have 3 types of tawheed or 2 types of tawheed. What's the big deal? As long as the content is valid. We say that when the different terms are given to one concept, oftentimes people, they deal with one concept as different concepts because it has a different term, and that's wrong. And it's no longer an issue of terminology now, but now it's actual khilaf johari. It's actual real difference of a difference now. It's no longer the same. So therefore, if it's just a number or just an issue of numbering and categorizing and splitting up, طيب, khair, la mushahat bil istilah. Name it as you want to name it. But the problem comes when you start dealing with one thing, one concept, one essence, like 3 different things, 3 different concepts, 3 different essences. And that's what has happened to ilm al-hadith in the later generations. They look at mudraj as if it's other than mu'allal. In actuality, it isn't. It's all under the chapter of illah. It's a hidden defect, a hidden glitch that only became clear and apparent after severe investigation and comparing between the various versions. This report shows that the Prophet ﷺ said this, and the second sentence is missing. And the other report is in the same, which goes to show, along with the other ones, let's say 3 against 1, or whatever the number is, the Prophet ﷺ did not say that Rather, that's the interpretation of Ibn Mas'ud. And that's a illa. That's a hidden defect. That's a ghalat. Khairan, inshallah. Moving forward. He says, or بتقديم أو تأخير, that there's the تغيير السياق, the way of the narration has been changed. Something you put before, you delayed, you put after, you skipped something, you mixed it up, you jumbled it, then that is called al-maqlub. It's called a hadith al-maqlub. Regardless whether it is maqlub in the sanad, the maqlub of the name, Ka'b ibn Bushayr, the person says Bushayr ibn Ka'b, like someone's name was John Smith and he calls him Smith John, okay, by mistake. Or in the hadith says that his left hand doesn't know what his right hand spins, and the person narrates it mistakenly and says the right hand doesn't know what the left hand spins. Does it change the meaning? Does it distort the hadith? One thing for sure is that it's a mistake, it's an error. And we know that in the sciences of hadith, the two guiding principles are precision and precaution. Those are the two guiding principles of hadith science, is ultimate surgical precision. And then we have utmost precaution from lying on the Prophet ﷺ by accident. And the moment we become sloppy and untidy, we'll lie against the Prophet ﷺ, and as if it's no longer unintentional, because we know we're supposed to behave in a certain manner of tidiness and of precaution. Khairan, inshallah. Before we move forward with al-maqlub, just like we took in Bayquniya and al-Tadhkir as well, the idraj, we know that there are different ways, of discovering when something is mudraj, such as it being something that the Prophet could have never ever said, like the hadith that's narrated by Abu Hurairah that says, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِ بِيَدِي, he says, by the one in whose hand my soul lies, if it wasn't for being kind to my mother and fighting in Allah's cause, I would like to be a slave. The Prophet could have never have said that. Whereas Allah gave him nubuwah, prophecy. How could he choose to be a slave and servitude? Or something in which it's become clear in another version, as we said, that it's from the interpretation of the companion, etc. The narrator himself says, Abdullah said, وهكذا. One of the ulama of Islam, who's strong and rooted, says that this is not from the kalam of the Prophet, it's the kalam of Umar or Ibn Umar. Ma yalbas al-muhrim, what is the muhrim to wear? And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the things that the muhrim isn't to wear. And at the end of the hadith, he says, وَلَا تَنْتَقِبُ الْمَرْأَةُ الْمُحْرِمَةُ وَلَا تَلْبَسُ الْقُفَّازَيْنِ. And the woman who's making ihram should not wear niqab nor wear gloves. Many of the ulama, they say that's not from the Prophet's speech, rather that's from the speech of Ibn Umar. Khairan, inshallah. Moving forward. So therefore we have the maqlub, in which it could be rewording someone's name, inverting someone's name, such as Bushayr ibn Ka'b or Ka'b ibn Bushayr, as we mentioned. Okay. Or the qalb in the actual metin, the right hand and left hand, etc. Khairan, inshallah. He then says, أو بزيادة راو فالمزيد في متصل الأسانيد, or by a person accidentally bringing another narrator in a chain, mention another narrator. It's not a breakage now, it's the exact opposite of the tadlis. It's the exact opposite of al-irsal al-khafi or al-mursal al-khafi, exact opposite. But a person adds a narrator by accident. There's only 4 people in the chain, and he mentions a 5th person. He puts one in there, And the scholars of Islam, they say that the person clearly says that I heard from this one, but it's extra, it's done by mistake. It's done by mistake. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. So that's called al-mazid fi muttasil al-asanid, the exact opposite of, for example, tadlis mathalan, in which a person is put in extra by error. And that's also, as we can clearly see, falling under al-illa, maqloob, mudraj, all of these things fall under al-mu'allal, all of them. Moving forward. He then says, وَقَدْ يَقَعُ الْإِبْدَالُ, after that he says, أَوْ بِإِبْدَالِهِ وَلَا مُرَجِّحَ فَالْمُضْطَرِبْ, or a narrator is replaced and exchanged or substituted, وَلَا مُرَجِّحَ, and there isn't one version which is stronger than the next. They all seem similar in strength. The narrator reports from this one, then he says this version, then he says another version. He mentions one narrator's name, his sheikh's names, in 5 different versions, or 3 or 4 different versions of the text. The Prophet said this, then another version, he didn't say that, and it's totally like, what is he saying? Which shows that he isn't strong and he's shaky, because the word muttarib linguistically means something which is shaky, coming from daraba fil ard, for a person to run and walk on the land, his feet move. A person's memory isn't firm, and it's clearly proof that all of the different versions from his students, are all similar in strength. We can't say this student is stronger and his version is better. No, they're all similar in strength, which shows that the sheikh himself, huwa alladhi tarab, he's the one who was shaky. He reported this hadith in these different ways, in these different manners, which goes to show that he wasn't strong and firm from day one. How do we know that there are different versions? There's no strength, no distinguished feature from one against another, except through compiling, comparing, and that is al-mu'allal as well. So we have the hadith al-muttarib, which we took as well, and Bayquni and Tadhkirah, and that is the hadith that is reported in different versions, and they're all mutasawiya fil quwwa. They're all similar in strength. We can't say that this student is better than that one, this one's shadh. No, it's clear that the mistake is from the sheikh nafsihi and not from the talaba. So that is called al-hadith al-muttarib. Khayran inshaAllah ta'ala. He then says, وَقَدْ يَقَعُ الْإِبْدَالُ عَمْدًا امْتِحَانًا. He says, and a person, he could possibly switch and replace and mix things around, put in names, take one chain here and put it on this matan on that chain, mix up the names and throw them at someone to test someone. Amdan imtihanan, to test someone, like the famous story of Imam al-Bukhari, in which they sat him down with the 10 hadith masters of Baghdad, and each hadith master gave him 10 hadiths. And it's not necessarily no need to say 10 hadiths with their isnads, because that's how they narrated hadiths, with the isnad in most cases back then. So each hadith master gave him 10 hadiths, and it was a mixture. It was mixed up. There was ibdal. They put this one here, they put that one there. They mixed and they matched a matan with the sanad, as we know, to test Imam al-Bukhari, to see, was the legend of Imam al-Bukhari a legend, or was it a reality? Naam, khairan inshaAllah. Moving forward, what is the ruling on testing a hadith scholar and giving him false information on purpose to see if he is strong? You'll find many stories of the scholars of hadith of the past. Many of them, they were warned from this. And they say, be careful. And you might be from those who set traps for your brother, and this is unlawful, you can't do this. It's makruh. And there are others who had the exact opposite view, and they said it is a necessity and a means of purifying and keeping the sunnah pure. Wallahu ta'ala alam. He then says, أو بتغيير مع بقاء السياق فالمصحف والمحرف. He says, or the narrator, he makes an error, he makes a mistake in which there's taghyir, he changes something, he distorts something, مع بقاء السياق, but the original context remains. The original context remains, such as the writing of the word. The letters look the same. Or the naqt, the nuqtas, the dots, alright, are changed, such as a jim and a ha and a kha, a sin and a sheen, a sad and a dad, a dha and a ta, a ghayn and a ayn, a fa and a qaf, etc. And we know that the ulama of Islam, back in the days, as we would say, quote unquote, they didn't necessarily write with the naqt. They didn't write with the dots. Alright? They would just know what it was. The word was so familiar. Their minds were so fresh and elastic that they didn't necessarily need the dots, quote unquote. So, for example, the hadith that states, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم احتجر في المسجد, that the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام احتجر. We have a hamza, we have a ha, we have a ta, we have a jim, we have a ra. احتجر. He took a hujra, like Surah Al-Hujurat. He took a tent, a small apartment in the masjid, and he stayed inside of the masjid. One narrator, he reported that the Prophet ﷺ, he says, احتجم في المسجد, that he made hijama in the masjid. Hijama, getting cupped. So we have the hamza, ihtajara, ihtajama, same. Then we have the ha, ihtajara, ihtajama. Then of course we have the ta, which is the same. We have the jim, which is the same. And then we have a ra and a mim, which look very similar when they're written, especially on the old style, the old script, the old manuscripts. If anyone has ever seen any of them, we've posted some of them on some of the live streams. And if not, we'll try to make a video in which we show you some old manuscripts. Okay? If you take a manuscript from the 8th century, the 7th century, the 9th century, okay, when I was working on my master's thesis, which was a book of Hafiz ibn Hajar, rahimahullah ta'ala, Ad-Diraya. Ibn Hajar died in the 9th century. It's old, but there are many that are much older. Only Allah knows the countless hours that were spent sitting in my library in Medina, reading the manuscript, eyes watering, bloodshot red. Allah knows what time in the morning. Only Allah knows how many pots of tea were consumed just reading the manuscript, figuring it out, not trying to rush, not trying to cheat, but actually reading it word for word, letter for letter, and literally suffering by following Hafiz ibn Hajar's handwriting. And one letter, one word, one this, one that, you'll be shocked how close it was. And the more you read the manuscript, of course they train you a little bit in school, your first year of the master's program, but that's it. The rest of it, you have to do it. And if ever you get stuck, you go back to your mushrif, your mentor. But most of the work you have to do. The back-breaking, painstaking work has to be done by you. So a word like ihtajar and ihtajama are very, 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 very similar, especially in an old-fashioned manuscript. There was no printing press back then. There was no photocopy machine back then. There was no scan. There was no Staples or Office Max. None of those things existed. There was no HP laser printer. Okay? So The ulama of Islam, of hadith, were extremely vigilant. And they were extremely precise. And one could say they were extremely overly petty. The smallest, tiniest mistake, most minute discrepancy, they jumped on it instantly. And they didn't allow any mistake and any sloppiness, as we said, with regards to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Because Allah, He made them for that. He made those men and women for that purpose. He created them for that, to serve the Prophet ﷺ's sunnah and his hadith. So therefore, we have the letters being changed, or we have the dots being changed. The pronunciation is different. The wording is different now. Okay? So we have musahaf. Okay? Whether it's with a kasra, fatha, or dhamma, and they didn't write with the vowels. They didn't write with the dots, let alone the vowels. Or the word has been changed. Ihtajra, ihtajama, etc. Okay? And there are many other examples of that, of the hadith which is called al-musahaf or al-muharraf, or they call it at-tashif, and they call it at-tahrif. Saying it wrong, the vowel changes the meaning of the word. 2 dots versus 3, no dots versus 1, etc. Now, khairan inshallah, moving forward. The author then says, ولا يجوز تعمد تغيير المتن بالنقص والمرادف إلا لعالم بما يحيل المعاني. He says, and it is unlawful for a narrator to intentionally shorten or add something, or not adding, shorten or substitute with it a synonym, unless a person is well learned of the language, and that person is well learned of the meaning of the actual hadith specifically, and the hadiths generally as a whole. If a person is not skilled in Arabic and the ma'ani, the meanings and the wordings and the sunnah in general, then he says he cannot take something out of the hadith, nor can he substitute a word or a sentence with a synonym. He has to report it word for word and not verbatim. He says that if a person is not learned of the meanings, he can't do that. So he's saying it's unlawful for you to report the hadith with your own meaning, to add a different word. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّةِ الْعَمَلُ بِالنِّيَّةِ. No, if you don't know the differences and the meanings, then you have to report it as you heard it exactly. Alright? So the scholars of Islam, meaning the scholars of hadith, they have a very long discussion of this issue. Riwayat al-hadith bil-ma'na. Can a person report hadith by the meaning, or does it have to be the exact wording? The Prophet ﷺ, he made dua for those who heard his hadith and memorize it and pass it on exactly as they heard it. So they say that means that a person is not to report a hadith with the meaning or in verbatim. No, but a person has to do it word for word. Alright? And others, if not the majority, they say that it's permissible with the condition that the meaning is sound. That the meaning is sound. And that it doesn't change the meaning. This goes to show you how to master the science of the hadith. You have to know other sciences, as we've explained before. You have to know the sciences of Usul-Fiqh, al-Istinbat, how to deduce, how to extract. You have to actually know fiqh, Quran, tafsir, qira'at, and also al-Lugha al-Arabiya. You have to know Arabic well to master hadith. If you just want to be proficient, be a basic novice, based off of your basic level of proficiency in Arabic. وَهَكَذَا. So a big part of the hadith library and a big part of the explanation of hadith in the books is off of the lugha, as we explained in countless times in Marjan, is the actual meaning of the word, the actual meaning of the sentence. Khairan inshallah. He then says, or before we move forward, we have the concept of summarizing a hadith as well. Is it permissible to summarize a hadith? Or does one have to report the whole entire hadith? No doubt it's more thorough to report the whole hadith, but it doesn't mean that it's haram to summarize it. And from the most famous ones who did that was Imam al-Bukhari. The last thing we'll mention in this session, he says, فَإِنْ خَفِيَ الْمَعْنَى احتيج إلى شرح الغريب وبيان المشكل. Perhaps we'll take this in the next class. Perhaps we'll take it in the next class. بإذن الله عز وجل. Allah knows best. والحمد لله رب العالمين.